Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment. We have a person that is, I'm looking at all of her bio, and she came from out of where my field, as far as business and that type of stuff, entrepreneur. And we would hire people like Erin to come to my staff to help them to help us change the culture and to do all of those different type things. So I am excited to have her come and introduce herself to us, and then we'll go and have her tell us her story so that we can get to know her a little better and that we can share wisdom with each other and grow as individuals. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Well, I would say where I'm at now is I am a coach. I sit in that industry. I teach people what I call impenetrable joy, which is the ability
Hmm.
to no longer be beholden to or at the mercy of people or circumstances to dictate whether you have a good or bad day, or for that matter, a good or bad life. Uh, and the journey that I take them on is recognizing that the story of their life is still at play in their everyday, and how we can, cultivate the parts that feel really great and we want to encourage, and rewire, so to speak, some of the other ideas. And I do that through one-on-one coaching. I also go into companies, as you mentioned, and do work with. Typically, I work with leadership. Sometimes I'll work with the
Hmm.
leadership in the team. And I have a book that's coming out. It's in the editing process right now and should be out in the next month.
Hmm.
And then I do online courses for both.
Nice.
I do an online
Hmm.
course just for the impenetrable joy, and then I do one
Oh.
for partnerships, so romantic partnerships.
Hmm.
I do a couples.
Excellent. I love your title. That is awesome.
Thanks.
So now that you have told us about where you are today, so Aaron, tell us about what happened to start you on this journey to end up where you're at. I always tell people that, and you'll see me put it in my notes and all over the things, that we all have a story, and many of us are in them are haven't maybe because of some disappointment or whatever, haven't really started on that. We're kind of on the fence, and so I want you to go back and tell us what happened. What was it? In some cases, most people, it's a relationship, it's always something. But I tell someone it's not always something. In a lot of cases it's something traumatic, but sometimes it is not. And so but whatever it is that started your journey, can you let us know what was it? Was it something personal, or just you said, you know what, I just want out?
Yes, and yes. So my story really has like three defining moments.
Okay.
The first was an anxiety disorder that I created through talk therapy.
Hmm.
I actually was going to couples counseling. And in that first session, I had a panic attack, and I'd never had one before. And so the counselor explained what it was and asked if I wanted to do some individual counseling. And through that individual counseling process, and don't get me wrong, talk therapy definitely is a thing, and I have nothing against it.
Hmm.
But for me, what I created out of that was this anxiety disorder, because I was unwilling to feel the feelings of the trauma that had happened to me when I was a child.
Okay.
And so, and that's what anxiety, fill in the blank, actually, anything that's low level that doesn't feel good is an attempt to not feel the actual feelings. It's an
Hmm.
emotional experience, but it's not an emotion. And I think that's really something that should be distinguished, because most people think anxiety is an emotion, and it's actually just a response to not feel what's actually going on.
Hmm.
So that's what happened. And it got so debilitating that I holed myself up in my home for nearly a year.
Whoa.
Uh, Unwilling or unable to go outside. And
Wow.
in that process, The only thing I would do was go to the grocery store out of necessity, and sometimes I couldn't even do that, and go to see my counselor. And
Hmm.
after 9 months of that, my counselor said, we're really not getting at root causes here. I want to send you to a homeopathic psychiatrist and see if she can help you.
Hmm.
And as it turns out, I did a 3 hour interview with her. She gave me a remedy, and 20 minutes later, my anxiety was nearly gone.
Wow.
And so I thought, wow, I have a new lease on life. I could, do something with this
Hmm.
life. And so I moved to a small town in Hawaii thinking, if I moved to an environment where I wasn't triggered,
Yeah.
then it was a simpler life, then everything would be fine. And lo and behold, I was still there. So I created anxiety, stress, overwhelm in this simpler life. And so that's another thing I like to tell your listeners is that those things are latent inside of us, and we're the ones that are bringing all of this to the table. It's not the environment.
Yes.
Um, and so I moved to Hawaii. I started a business. I had never been an entrepreneur before.
Hmm.
And I really didn't know what I was doing. I had really no business doing it, but I did it anyway. And as it turned out, it just went off. Like, I mean, it was the business grew incredibly quickly, and I, in the process of learning how to be an entrepreneur and navigating employees and multi six figure contracts and all kinds of things, I was super stressed out and
Hmm.
had a lot of anxiety. And I navigated that for about 10 years, just
Wow.
really high level stress. And one morning, the second thing that happened
Hmm.
was I got a phone call from a client, and she was complaining about my staff. And I used to get fanatical about when there were client complaints. I felt like it was, some sort of blow to my integrity.
Hmm.
And so I told her I would be right over to help. And I raced over to my friend's house to drop my daughter off so she could watch her. And in doing so, I backed into her driveway and sideswiped my car in her husband's truck. And when I
Wow.
came back later to pick up my daughter, and there was no damage to his truck, so I
Hmm.
was like, I gotta go. And I came back, and my friend said, when you hit my husband's truck, he was under it working on it, and he thought it was going to land on him.
Whoa.
And I just thought, this is not okay to live this life this way. There's got to be a better way. And so then I delved into self development. I started going to seminars and
Hmm.
reading all the books, and I started to make some changes that, were maybe a little on the superficial side, but I started to feel less stressed
Stress.
out.
Hmm.
Mostly changes in my business, and recognizing the worth of my staff and myself and
Hmm.
my business and the service that we were providing, and getting very clear on what we were able to provide. So that lessened some of the burden. But then a few years later, I found myself in a divorce, and it just leveled me.
Hmm.
And I thought, how could I be in this place? I'd done all this years of self development, spent tens of thousands of dollars doing it. And here I am in this dark place, and I don't have a solution. I don't have a strategy to getting out of this feelings
Hmm.
and the experience. And so I decided to read this book. I don't know if you have heard of this book. It's called Course in Miracles.
Mm-mm. No, I haven't.
So it has 365 passages, and it's meant to be a year-long journey.
Okay.
You read a passage a day for an entire year. And the first month, it was interesting, but it wasn't really moving the needle. And then in the second month, something very strange started to happen. I started to see this word as though it was like popping up off the page. It was in
Hmm.
bold. It just kept saying joy. The answer is joy. The path is joy. I just kept seeing joy, joy. And I finally was like, okay, I get it. Joy is the answer, but I don't know how to
How to
get
get it?
there. I don't, like, what do I need to do here, And then, of course, when you ask, you receive.
Yes. Yes.
And there was a gentleman that I had met through a seminar company that I was involved with. He had a seminar coming up. I bought it sight unseen and went. And it, as it turned out, it was a day long seminar on the visualization process
Mm-hmm.
that he teaches. And so I was so excited by it. I came home, I started using it, and my entire life lined up. And then I went back a few months later to train with him, and I started teaching his
Mm-hmm.
seminar for a couple of years. And when I came back from training with him and I stood in front of the first class, I it was like this download or culmination of all the things that I had
Mm-hmm.
learned in my life through reading, through seminars, and 5 minutes in, I ditched my notes and I was just, I had the recognition that it was my purpose to be there teaching people how to find their joy and cultivate it daily so that they could have that as their predominant experience. And that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years.
Wow, Aaron, that is a beautiful story in the sense that here you were, this woman trapped in her home and there for a year. And then from that, you proceeded to relocate and to start a business, um, from being in a situation where you are just totally afraid to go out to deal with people, to and then to come to a totally different location. That is gutsy, number one. I mean, that is that's takes a lot of bravery, I would say, to do something like that, and that you did not allow, once you began to see how, when you moved, what made you start that business? What, okay, you came out from being in a room for X amount of time, and then you moved to Hawaii. What made you say, you know what, let me start a business?
Well, prior to that, I was a special ed
Mm-hmm.
teacher on the high school level, and I had a lot of dreams about teaching these kids how to navigate this world with the challenges that they had. And I just felt like I was sort of beat down by the administration a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And, I'd come up with these ideas to, help them integrate into society. And they weren't having any part of that. And so I was super frustrated by that. So when I moved to Hawaii, I had three
Mm-hmm.
goals. One was to uh, start my own
Mm-hmm.
business and work part time. And the third was to smell a plumeria every day. A plumeria is a tropical flower that is very
Mm-hmm.
fragrant. And so those were the three goals I had. And I obviously was very intentional because upon arriving there that night, I got my first client. My sister and I went to go play pool at a bar, and I was chatting with a gentleman at the bar, and he was looking for somebody to help him start a business. And I had zero business trying to help somebody start a business, but I had all the time in the world to figure it out. So I somehow convinced him that I could help him figure out how to start a business in Hawaii. And I learned, just like everybody else, trial by fire. And then I got another client a couple days later. It just rolled. It just was obvious. I was just obviously very clear that that's what I was doing.
that,
And
that
and so it started out a little wonky, as most
mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs do, but then it started to evolve and make
Mm-hmm.
sense all of a sudden. And then it was clear the service I was providing. And um, I actually started two businesses out of the gate. And
Wow.
crazily enough, this I'm dating myself now, but I put an ad in the paper is how I decided I was going to advertise, right? Because that was the only way to advertise back then. And the ad read, hire a housewife, will cook, clean, run errands, like
Uh-huh.
miscellaneous. And so I got phone calls about, I was helping a gentleman, I was cooking for him to help him train for a race. I helped another gentleman start a business because I had that first one. I figured it out, all the paperwork I needed to do to start a business. So all of a sudden, I was like a business consultant. Um, Yeah, it was crazy. And I, was cleaning places and I was really doing all the things. And then it just came together all of a sudden that, uh, so I consulted almost the entire time I was there.
Wow.
But I ended up with a cleaning and property management business, even though I started with all those other things.
Wow,
So,
that's awesome. I actually had a cleaning business myself when I first moved to Florida from New York. I was working in a company, and we had lost our. We used to build flight simulators, and we had lost the contract. And I'm walking by my boss's office, and I heard him talking to a friend. It must be, and he said, "Yeah, my brother-in-law is doing great. He started this cleaning business." And he is doing excellent. So I stopped it. It kind of had, it hit me, and I'm standing there eavesdropping on this conversation. And that was, I believe, that was Wednesday. I had my license on Friday for a cleaning company. I had nothing. I had my first assignment, the first contract was a hotel to clean a hotel. I got the information out of a home builder's book. And so the address, when I got there, Aaron, I thought it was a home. And I kept looking and going, and the guy's taking me around, and I kept yelling, this is a hotel. and I had got my business formed and hired people. They're like, you need this much insurance. I went and got the insurance. I called a agency to hire people. It was just crazy. So I kind of get some of the pressure and all that, the fun things that you get from creating. You have this mind, and I tell people, and you're a perfect example of that. I tell them, I said, beyond your fear is your success. So now, how you handle your fear will determine when you begin to get your success. And so, you had your situation, and you handled your fear, and you left, and you placed yourself. And the principles that I tell people about, Aaron, all of it, I hear you talk about getting that purpose within yourself. And I have this little nugget that I tell people. um, you're restless when you don't know your purpose. And so if you start to get a picture of your purpose, it motivates you. It causes you to begin to take that step, or that one step, and it always begins with that one step. And a lot of cases, like you were just saying, sometimes you just don't know it's here, and you take that step, and you create as you go. You begin to formulate your path. As one who started a business of cleaning, one as a consultant, and all the other things, you begin to formulate your path and create your way. And after a year or so, you look back and you go, how did I do it? And it's fascinating. But I love the things that you're saying about visualization, all of these different tools that you utilize in order to begin to get up. I tell people, I grew up in a church, and one of the things that dealt with visualization that really kind of like stuck with me as a young man, it said that Jesus Christ stayed up on the cross because he visualized um, the people that he was dying for. And I thought that was powerful stuff, and that was the reason why he stayed there. So I try to tell people, it you have to utilize all of these different tools to help you that to come out of your situation. And I just love how you got there. It's just one beautiful, fascinating piece of story that you have. I love it.
yeah, and I want to add to what you were just saying. That fear piece, the thing that stops most people from doing what they know in their heart is the thing that they are probably best
Mhm.
at and would enjoy the most, is is a lack of
Yeah.
trust that the universe or whatever you believe in, God, whatever the powers that
Mm-hmm.
be, nature, if you can just trust
Yeah.
and get very clear and intentional about what it is you want to create,
Mm-hmm.
then that stepping over the ledge feeling of fear to toward the thing that you know you want to do, then you just go back to that and
Yes.
you just keep going back to that every time you have that moment, and you just go back and go, okay, I trust that the universe has my back. I
Mm-hmm.
trust that, I'm clear and intentional about what I want to create here. And that's the piece that people don't usually talk about. There's, they say just go do it or whatever, but the thing is like that fear continues to come up until you
Yes.
quiet it, and it takes time to quiet it. And so in the meantime, if you can just trust
Mm-hmm.
that something's got your
Yeah.
back, it's not you alone doing this in this world by yourself. That, I do believe that we all have a unique offering based on our past
Mm-hmm.
experiences, our talents innately, and desire. And uh, and and I think that that's our purpose here, is to discover what that is and bring it to the world so that we can all enjoy it.
I absolutely 100% believe in that. I believe we all have something to contribute to each other, and it's just a matter of us getting past that initial fear. And a lot of it, I heard you mention something happened when you were a young person, and usually something always does. Someone, because of lack of understanding, and maybe of how they were even brought up, because those are some of the things I had to deal with in my life. And there was a situation that happened to me as a young man that had caused me many years in my life to be closed off to people. I would only allow them to a certain area of my heart. I wouldn't let them in anywhere because of the pain that I got when I was younger, as I experienced. And I remember walking on college campus one day, and I thought I had dealt with that fear and that situation, and it became crystal clear, and I find myself running to find an area to cry because I knew I was gonna I felt I was breaking down, and I ran to this area, hid, and cried my heart out on college campus to because I hadn't dealt with it, and so I had to go to the people who had caused me that pain, and forgive them for what they did to me as a young man. And in doing that was when I began to start to uh, move forward in some of my dreams and the things emotionally that had arrested and in prison, if you will. And so it was nice to hear that you had similar stuff that it when it arose, it caused you the anxiety, and based on how you handled the anxiety, and then you got pretty tough on that anxiety to leave and to start your own business, to jump in. I love that because you just have to trust that the universe, whoever you believe in, God, to hold you up, and that once you make that step, it'll be amazed because once you make your decision, you actually release energy to call the people to come when you're focused, and you release those words. I believe that we release power that will bring people and draw them to you, so that you can go to a bar and shoot pool, have a conversation, and begin your business.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that we're here for the purpose of healing and growth, and
Hmm.
those stories of all the things that happened that didn't feel good when you were a kid is not who you actually are. it's to help you understand where the healing and growth can take place.
Yes.
And so those experiences, I think most people feel like they are their story. They
Mm-hmm.
are their thoughts and their emotions around those stories. And the reality is the story is just something that happened. It definitely was an experience that you had, but it's not who you are. And you
Mm-hmm.
know it's not who you are because you can tell me the story. If it was who you were, you wouldn't even be able to get outside of it enough to tell the story. And if your thoughts and your emotions were who you are,
Yes.
then you wouldn't be able to tell me what your thoughts are or your emotions are. And so that's part of the healing process. What you're talking about and what I was alluding to before is recognizing where the healing and growth is, and how you recognize that is through your emotional experience.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in reaction to people or circumstances because they're not showing up how you want them to, then you know that's a signal. It's not about that person that just said that thing that made me go get angry or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's about me. There's something inside of me that could be
Yes.
healed. And so that healing process is recognizing, instead of pointing the finger out, it's in.
Yes.
The finger continues to come in and you continue to go, there's something inside of me that needs healing there because
Yes.
my voice is raised now, or I'm angry, or I have anxiety. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people think these emotional experiences are because of somebody else or something else. And I would say that they're latent inside of us until that
Yes.
person gives us the opportunity to recognize it,
Yes.
versus blaming them
Mm-hmm.
for making you feel bad. It's like, what's inside of me that needs healing because that person said this thing and all of a sudden I'm triggered.
Absolutely. I tell people that when people present in your life, they are there, especially friends and family and stuff like that, that they're there to help you with your scotoma, the blind side. They see it in your personality. And when they recognize something that is not right, or a behavior or a pattern that you are doing that is destructive, and they point it out to you, you'll have two response. You'll either cuss them out or you will be um, able to say, you know what, let me think about this, and I'll do the best I can to handle it and make it, deal with it. And it takes a mature person to get there. For years, I would cuss them out, Aaron, and then as I began to mature and grow as an individual, I understood what they were doing, and there's a little proverb that says iron sharpens iron. And so they will make that note to me, and I would take that information, and I would tell someone, I would let me place it in the forefront of my thoughts, because why would I be doing that? Because I want to take it and meditate on it. I want to really investigate it. I want to decipher it. I want to understand, why am I doing this? What is causing me to do this? And then find a way to master it as it goes, and become a student of learning of myself. I think all of us have to become students to learn of who we are. And you mentioned the other pivotal thing that happened was a divorce. I know that happened in my life, that also caused me in my journey to stop and really investigate some of the decisions that I've made in my life, some of the people that I had brought into my life. And so I had to now take inventory. How did I get here? What decisions did I made? Could I have handled it a different way? And so I took several months and went into this inventory of myself after my divorce, and began to really try to get a handle. Okay, can what happened? And so those places, that visitation and conversation with yourself, I try to tell people it is the most important thing that you will ever do, because once you come out of there, you get a better understanding of yourself. And I try to tell them, learn to forgive yourself. Come out of there not critical, but forgiving. Come out of there appreciating yourself, because you're looking at the dark things. You're looking at the things that you'd mentioned. It was a dark period of your life. How did you take that camera, that lens, Aaron, and then began to investigate and to begin to put things together to help you to stand up now and then go from that place?
It's so funny because life unfolds so slowly that when you take the time to look back on the things, then you realize, oh, I met that person, and then I did that thing, and
Hmm.
then I made that decision, right?
Yeah.
And you see that the journey all makes sense when you're looking back at it, but while you're doing it, it's so
Yeah.
unclear. At the time, I mean, going to that seminar and learning the visualization process was so pivotal for me because in that visualization process, I learned actually what joy
Hmm.
is. I experienced it in that visualization process because the visualization process that I learned and that I teach now, which is very similar to what I was taught, uh, it requires you to have an elevated emotional
Hmm.
experience in order to the idea was to create what you wanted in your life,
Yeah.
and now I recognize that what I always wanted and what everybody always wants is joy.
Hmm.
They think they want
Yeah.
happiness, but happiness is based on external
Hmm.
things and it's short
Yeah.
lived. It's, you cross the finish line, you get the
Yeah.
promotion,
Yeah.
you get the new car or
Absolutely.
the new house or whatever.
Hmm.
And at some point, they're just not that exciting anymore. But joy is different. It has the excitement of all those things, but it also includes things like stillness and peace of
Yeah.
mind and
Hmm.
calm, and those are joyful too. In fact, I find them even more
More joyful.
joyful than those, brief hits of
Yes.
exuberance,
Hmm.
And in that visualization process, I was able to create that elevated emotional experience
Hmm.
every morning. And through that process, I realized, this is what it's like to actually be in joy.
Hmm.
This is why it's so important. And it's our birthright. We should all be experiencing that almost predominantly. The only time we're not experiencing that is when we're deciding that, I'm in reaction to something.
Yeah.
There's opportunity to heal and grow right there. I'm going to take this opportunity to do that. Aside from that, the rest of it should be enjoying this life today.
Hmm.
Not waiting for the car, the house, the relationship, the whatever it is, fill in the blank that you think is going to make you feel good. You can feel good now. And that's what that visualization process taught me. And so, of course, I teach that to everybody because prior to that moment, if you'd asked me what joy
Hmm.
was, I'm not sure I could have answered it
Wow.
because I didn't know what it was and I hadn't had the experience of it up until that moment.
Wow. That's a profound thing, because I don't think many of us even know the difference between the two, the happiness and the joy, Aaron. I think your I think what you do is priceless, in the sense that to educate them about the difference, because a lot of people are chasing happiness, and they don't understand the difference between, because happiness, as you say, it's just a fleeting thing, it's a temporary thing, and joy is much deeper. um, and I know I got into one of the things that helped me through my divorce was meditation, and being also in the professional world, it was the meditation that helped me to manage my day. And in that meditation, I would visualize what my day was like, all of the different things I would visualize and control. And so I controlled my day. I would tell people my day was controlled before I even walked in. All the problems never wasn't in control of my day. I was in control of me. If I'm in control of me, I'm in control of my day. And so I would, because of my meditation time and visualization, I actually had to teach those type principles to my children to help them as young men as well when they were young boys. As I learned, I taught them. So, um, my hope was that they would get a little smarter than I was. And but the visualization piece is very important, as I mentioned to you earlier about what Christ did. But the joy is even more important when they get an understanding of it, what it truly is. And tell me about when you you see someone come to you that is in that dark place and that transformation. As you get a chance, I tell people we are part and whole as the world, partaking in voyeurism, and so we look into people's lives, and when we see a couple, when we see a child, when we see a musician, when we see someone, we are partaking in some form of voyeurism. Tell me your experience and even the experience of those that, as you explain the difference, to see them connect that and then move from that space to to their life. How I mean, give us some insight into that process right there.
Well, first, I just want to say how honored I am that people trust me enough to tell me all their things,
Mm-hmm.
because that is not an easy thing to do
Yeah.
for a lot of people to get very real and say all the things that they likely haven't said to anybody ever before,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that's what they tell me. um, it through being so grateful that I can hold space for people to do
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. Uh, for me, the process is very different for each individual because people come to me in different stages
Yeah.
of wherever they're at. And likely they come to me because, as you alluded to before, they're in some sort of
Mm-hmm.
crisis. Often we think that, you know, I can handle another day of this, or the stress will go away shortly. And again, I want to mention that these things live inside of us late. They're latent and they
Yes.
get triggered by people or
Mm-hmm.
events. And, uh, and so if you know this, why wait until you have a
Yeah.
crisis to help yourself heal and grow when you could do the work now, the
Yes.
work that you're meant to be doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, However, most people come to me in crisis, um, and I love that moment where I see the light bulb go on
Yeah.
in their eyes, where they just go, "Oh, you mean I don't have to feel this awful all the time? You
Mm-hmm.
mean there's something I can do about it?
Yeah.
You mean there's hope for this,
Yeah.
life, that it's not going to be mired in stress and anxiety and overwhelm." And I love that piece. I love to see them recognize that, the things that they've been going after, the reason that they've been going after it, are really not their fault. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we just generationally have taught people to go after
Yes.
things to make us feel better, to get validated externally to make us feel better. And watching people go through the process of learning to get to know who they
Mm-hmm.
are and to love
Yes.
themselves is such divine work. I just feel so honored that I get to do it, because this piece of, I think everything distilled down comes to the pinnacle of, we just want to feel like we are valued
Yeah.
and have value. And that story invalidated us. uh, this idea that we get validation from, parents or elders or teachers or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, invalidated us.
Yeah.
And so now it's learning how to create that internally so that they can have that
Mm-hmm.
experience instead of seeking outside of ourselves for answers. All of the answers are inside of
Inside,
us
yeah.
individually.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I,
Yeah, and we're all connected.
yeah,
So, between amongst us, as you said, this journey, it sounds kind of lonely how we're speaking about it, but actually, when we're willing to get past the fear and navigate who we really are, who we truly are,
mm-hmm.
not the story, not the
Yeah.
thoughts, not the emotions, that's such a service to everybody around us because they can feel that,
Oh, yeah.
just like you can tell when somebody's in a bad mood
Mm-hmm.
or in a good mood. All this energy is, it's palpable. And so when we decide to take ourselves on and learn who we really are and heal and grow from those experiences, then we're allowing and holding space and creating an environment for other people to do that as well.
Yes. Yes. I in my book, I talked about the first chapter I talked about was self love, because at the time I saw, because of some of my upbringing and some of the things that happened to me as a young man, I find that the love of myself was lacking. And because of that, I was um, I allowed people to opinion of myself. I gave that value over who I thought I was. And then when I went on my quest to find out who I was. I did not date anyone. People have heard me said this before. I would go around, Aaron, I'd kiss myself and say, I love this color. I began to go and really sit down and go to picnics and dinner and all movies. And but I didn't just go. I went and I questioned. I was just digging, and digging, and I had to realize that there were some things about this young man that was fascinating and strong, and I was able to overcome certain things and manage my life, and I started to metamorphose into this thing that I became excited about, that I actually fell in love with. And I would tell people I had some breakups with some of the things that I held that I was dating, things like guilt and anxiety and all these other entities that I was dating and having a relationship with. I actually I broke up with them, and we dated a long time ago, and there's no need for me to go back and date that person. I'm finished. We're done. And so as we began to, and what I did actually was I created in my mind to function. I had to create these entities and create these people. And as I mentioned, fear was one of them. All of the different things, and had this breakup, and as I did my grieving and went on, and I became um, a student of myself. I accepted myself. I fell in love with myself. I am not, perfect. I recognize that I'm not. I am constantly learning and want to learn. And so the joy, I have this deep joy about this individual person. And so people always, when they meet me, like, man, you have this smile on your face. And I tell them, I said, yeah, it cost me much, but and I would tell them it's priceless. You can get it yourself. You can go through that process. And I hear you talk about it, the fact that when you bring your client to the place to realize that, yeah, I don't have to be this way, I don't have to do that. Start looking at yourself. The answers are there. Take that breath that takes you from one dimension to another, and you're able to really focus and take away the pain. And I recommend, and I know you do too, I recommend everyone to get on that journey of to find out who you are, to begin to love yourself, because it is precious. There's nothing like it. It is valuable. in so many ways. So, um, how are you now with your space as to? I know in the beginning you talk about your courses and stuff like that. Talk a little more about that if you can go in that about your courses that you do, your private courses and stuff like that, so that people can reach out to you because of the things that you have to give them. Let them know what you have, Aaron.
So I have a 4 week course called
Mm-hmm.
Impenetrable Joy, and it's 4 weeks because there's four it's a process that I teach that has four individual pieces to it to learn how to heal and grow
Mm-hmm.
from that story, why we're here. And I just love that course because, it's so fun to do things as a group because people, share their story, and inevitably everybody that shows up there is meant to be there. And so
Mm-hmm.
somebody shares part of their story and another person goes, I had that same thing. And, so I love that whole aspect of being in the group. The other course I have is also called Impenetrable Joy, but it's for couples and it's about spiritual partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And that is teaching those four principles to healing and growth, but in a way so that couples can see how exponential growth can happen amongst each other. Because typically, what happens when you're in a romantic relationship with another person is, they'll say something or do something or not say something or not do
Mm-hmm.
something. And we get into reaction, and then we start firing off each of our beliefs, and they keep escalating the conversation. And when we can understand that piece we were talking about before, where it's like, you said this or you did that, and it becomes, oh, I'm in reaction to something you did. That's my piece to navigate. I don't need you to change in order for me to feel good,
Yeah.
right? Only I can do that. Like, I'm in charge of that. And so when couples recognize that, then they can have exponential growth because it no longer becomes about that person did this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, they're giving me the opportunity. And those relationships, romantic relationships and relationships between parent and child, are fundamental to our healing and growth. I mean, there is no better relationships to navigate ourselves than romantic relationships
Yeah.
and parent child relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
so watching couples go through that course is so exciting and juicy for me, to see them change their experience in their relationship. And just like anything else, this process to change is challenging. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of resistance,
Oh yeah.
first of all, like internally,
Mm-hmm.
subconscious mind not interested in change, only about survival.
Yep.
Those our loved ones that love us so much and can see that change would be good for us. Once we begin to change, they're in reaction to our change because all of a sudden they might need to look at themselves and see
Mm-hmm.
that they're, and then society doesn't really want you to change because it has you believe that what you need is another car
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
more money or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the thing is
Mm-hmm.
externally. And so there's lots of resistance to change, and that's what makes it so challenging. But watching people navigate that is so interesting. And the thing I want to say is that just like anything that brings us the desired result,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a one and done deal. So you may hear this podcast and say, oh, I just need to navigate my emotions. That tells
Yeah.
me, how I can heal and grow.
Yeah.
And I'll just say that it's a up and back thing.
Yep.
It's
Mm-hmm.
not it's, even though you get intentional, it's not full steam ahead and there's no setbacks and there's no ill feelings anymore. I still, after years of doing this, navigate through growth periods,
Yes.
but I do
Yes.
it very differently than I did in the
Yes.
past. But they
Uh-huh.
still happen, and things that I
Yes.
thought were completely healed. Just recently, something came up, and I was like, really? This again? So interesting.
Yeah. I think it's how we react. We've learned to react differently. As I mentioned to you, scotoma once, that blind side that we have. And when that thing appears, you either, when I was younger, I responded differently than how I am today because I became a student of myself and learned that, okay, this person is not trying to hurt me, this information is useful. And so, if you have a different perspective on that information that or that situation that brought up that feeling, you're going to respond differently. You're going to say, "Wait a minute, this is useful." Like you had just said, I thought I had handled this. I thought this was done a long time ago. Apparently, there's something else here that I need to revisit. And so, the how we respond to that situation is what happens as a result as we grow and learn about our who we are and become this new creation that we are creating constantly until the day that we pass. I don't think um, that it's something that ends. I think that would be boring in a way, wouldn't you? That my
Yeah.
growth would end and I just walk around like that would, to me, that doesn't sound appealing in any way. you know. So it's just.
No, I think one of the important pieces to healing is also this idea of wonder, right? And curiosity
Mm-hmm.
versus what I think a lot of people experience when they're wanting to heal and grow, which is pain
Yeah.
and shame
Mm-hmm.
and, berating themselves and or being down on themselves about all the things. Uh, I think I think if you're coming from the standpoint of curiosity and wonder, then you become the spectator of yourself versus
Yes.
thinking that you are this experience.
Yeah.
And in that process, it creates space between the experience you're having and who you actually are. And
Mm-hmm.
when you can create that space and become the spectator, then this out here just becomes a movie with different
Yeah.
casts of characters, and it's
uh-huh.
so much more interesting than being in reaction and checking out, like, being unconscious about all the interactions that you're having. You become in the present moment, which is where I believe true freedom is. And you can
Mm-hmm.
see people for who they are, not only just as, wonderful, beautiful humans that are going through their own healing and growth too.
Yeah.
You can see
Yeah.
that and go, and then you can have compassion for them and
Yes.
compassion for yourself for
Yes.
recognizing it.
Mm-hmm. Empathy. I think, as I mentioned, as you said, I believe that we are independent and yet interdependent, and that is the thread that we weave with each other. Our stories, our pain, our all the other things that we share, and from your insight, you're able to help someone. From mine, from theirs, they may hold the answer that are the key to something that I was looking for. Had I look at them differently because of what their color or whatever else it is, and I look at them and made a judgment on them, I may have missed that piece that I needed to free me from the current situation that I'm in. That doesn't say that I'm not going to get it. It may come 10 years from now, 5 years from now, because I missed it because of a prejudice that I had, that that person's experience had the key to free me. And so I try to tell people, come and live with an openness, an open mind, an open heart. Don't live with a judgmental heart because it's painful. It's it can lead to dark places. But if you live with an open mind, that when you see anyone on the street, it doesn't matter, and you feel that pull to have that conversation. It may start with a smile, and usually in many cases it does, and you have an eye contact, and you may have just bow your head to each other, and it begins that conversation that presents gives you the information to free you for the next stage of your life. And so Aaron, I'm excited that you came by because you have so much information, and I think your bravery is incredible. The fact that, and this is what I tell people, it's a bravery that you have to take an undertaking. That this is not for people who are weak. This is for people who want to change where they're at and looking at yourself going into the dark places. It takes bravery. You may start off weak, but I trust me, if you keep coming and keep taking that step one at a time, you're going to look back and go, wow, how did I get here? As you've been listening to us. And so I want to welcome and tell you guys that Erin has shared, and you guys have listening. She's shared so much about what she has gone through, that she trusted us to give us all that information. And I thank you that you have come into this space and that you felt safe enough to share. And it is my hope that the listeners would take the wisdom that she has given to us and change their life. I want you guys to get to her site, get into those classes, those couples that are listening, get into her classes, those singles that are listening, get into those classes, get to know who you are, pick her brains, get her to teach you how to be joyful and not happy. Call her up, and I'm going to leave her information for you guys to get it, and so that you can really make sure that she becomes one of your mentors, and that you can, I tell people when I read a book, that whatever book that I'm reading, that's my mentor. And so for that time that I'm reading that book, I allow myself to be mentor. And so I want you guys to come to Erin and have her mentor you to usher you from where you're at today to that space where you can live from joy. Erin, thank you so much for coming.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I love having these conversations, and I love that people create a platform to have these conversations because I think they're very important.
Excellent. Thank you. I will get you all the information, and we're going to post this. And I'm telling my family here at Threads of Enlightenment to welcome Erin and to support her in every way possible. All of you all around the world, just reach her and get in touch with her. And as I mentioned, see if you can get into one of those classes and get to all of her course. I'm going to put your stuff out on the sites, Aaron, so that everyone can reach you and get in touch with you. And hope that you will come again and be a friend here at Threads of Enlightenment to help us grow.
Of course, anytime.
Thank you so much. You
Thank
have a good
you.
evening.
You too.
Bye bye. Everyone who's listening to this podcast. We hope to continually help you to learn how to embrace moments of darkness, because it is in the darkness that we learn how to develop and use our abilities to truly see those parts of ourselves, often invisible to us, in the light. It becomes your responsibility to navigate through all of your trials, to find out who you truly are, and begin your journey to loving yourself, which is possibly one of the most difficult things you will ever do in your life. To love yourself and to find the real you, but always remember to enjoy the journey. Thank you for coming by. Please subscribe, and if you can support us financially, we deeply appreciate it.